What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today WoW Classic. You know, by this point, I'm pretty sure I don't even need to explain what World of Warcraft is. This is an MMORPG that has reached monumental success, boasting over 10 million players. There have been books written about its success, and an entire South Park episode that actually takes place in this universe. But what people may not understand is that while this game is making just astronomical amounts of money, it's actually had a war brewing inside it, which is that the fan base is very, very divided on a certain debate, which is this game getting better? Over the course of a bunch of expansions, we've now seen these people actually go to different planets and fight just giant bosses themselves. But is the game getting better, or is it getting worse? Which has led to a lot of people actually asking the developers themselves if they can get the classic game back, if instead of trying to play the newest and greatest content, if they could go back to vanilla, the original game that came out 15 years ago. And surprisingly, Blizzard actually did it. Now, for a long time, Blizzard, the developers themselves, actually said that players were stupid for asking for this, but eventually they realized they were wrong and decided to create it. And now, a week after launch, I have put 100 hours into this, trying out the dungeons, exploring different territories, and really trying to see what this game is like. And I have to say that something that's very, very shocking is that WoW Classic is different. In my opinion, this is a new game than what came out 15 years ago, and I was there for that. What I really want to try and emphasize in this video is all the changes that have been made and how I think that this will actually improve the experience. This game is not flawless. In fact, I'd say that it has a lot of very big and glaring problems, but beyond that, it is definitely the most fun MMORPG in the market right now, just because it stays so true to its roots. Now, you may be asking, what makes this so great? Obviously, the graphics aren't impressive, this is a game from super yesteryear, and yet it manages to be fun, and the reason why is because it's difficult. This is a game where every mistake you make costs you a heavy price. Like, just as a random example, say you meet a bunch of strangers and you're trying to go into a big cool dungeon where you're fighting a bunch of werewolves. Well, this can be extremely fun and very, very exciting, but if you accidentally pull too much and get too many of the bad guys on you at once, then all of you will die, which will actually break your gear, which costs you in-game money, and obviously make you have to run back to your body, which means that sometimes a mistake like that, even a tiny mistake, might cost you 15 minutes. Now, that sounds like a downside, but it's actually a benefit. Everything in this game has a very genuine weight to it. Everything you do actually matters. Like when you're just trying to quest, if you're actually picking up a quest in town, it doesn't tell you where to go. It doesn't have a little icon on your map. Instead, it just gives you a vague description of what you're supposed to do in order to get the reward. And some of these rewards are fantastic, which means that you really want to try and figure it out. You want to try and answer the riddles or find the relics because you want to try and improve your character and do better. But this brings me to what's definitely different. There are some very fundamental systematic changes that have been implemented that make this drastically different from the original version of World of Warcraft. And the first one is actually very controversial, which is called layering. Essentially what happened was that a lot of the programmers realized that this game was going to be big. Already millions and millions of people are trying it, and if millions of people are all logging in, then certain areas of the game would be way too packed to play in. If there's 10,000 people in one house, you'll never be able to pick up an item and leave, right? So they decided to implement a special system where basically there would just be special phases. You could be standing in the exact same spot as another player, but they'd be invisible if too many people were in the same area. And it's actually something that I think works. It's not always perfect, and people are already using it to exploit, to basically like pick up a cool resource like a really rare set of minerals and then teleport to a different layer and then pick up that same mineral again. But I think that when it comes to something like right here, I just made a new character and his name is Nut in My Pants, and while I'm playing as him, I'm able to run around and kill animals and get quests done, and it's not nice that this entire area seems relatively empty. It gives me a chance to actually kill these monsters and get experience points because I'm not competing against 10,000 other people at once. There are downsides to layering, and they've claimed that they're going to remove it, but it's clearly one of those changes that's systematic and very, very inlaid, and I think that for now at least, it is at least sort of working. The biggest thing though that's very drastically new is that the way that we play games now is different. I mean, we kind of just have to face facts that the way people play games in 2019 is not how we played games in 2004. The biggest one being now that everybody likes to meme and be silly and really, really eccentric, which means that when you're trying to do stuff in this, the community has a very different vibe to it. Everybody is very focused and serious, and everybody wants to be crazy and wacky and goofy instead of just kind of playing the game casually, which I actually think is an improvement. Everybody is just so dead set on being the best, on trying to get the best fishing or get the best gear or get the best kills, and because of it, it makes it where if you are a motivated individual, you can get a lot done in this game. Like, one of the things that's happening right now that's very baffling is players right now are trying to get level 60 as quickly as possible, so they've actually discovered that you could get together with a team of casters, mages, and warlocks and actually kill entire dungeons at once. You could actually go into like a little private castle. This is a little like church called Scarlet Monastery full of all these like evil preachers. We were pulling hundreds of enemies simultaneously and burning them down for massive experience. It makes it where if I'm trying to level up, instead of taking hours and hours and hours, I was able to do it in, about a day total. And it makes it one of those things where the game has shifted to be much more serious and much more goofy simultaneously. It's a game that has a very different fan base, but I do think it's for the better. Now, something else that's actually changed that I think is good is they've definitely done a graphics overhaul. The assets here are still very old school. People look very low resolution, but they've done things to try and make it where the general world is more bright and colorful. It's very obvious that they've instigated a new style of lighting to make it where beautiful sunrises are more often, the water effects are more shiny, and things like more clutter on the ground, so there's like actually weeds and grass and roots. Little details to make this old game not look positively ancient. Now, the last thing that I really want to try and get into is that I think that the biggest change they've made, and I want to see how it plays out, is the fact that this is the final version of World of Warcraft Vanilla and not the original version. When this game came out, it actually had a ton of problems. There were certain classes that just sucked. I mean, there were certain character combinations that if you decided to play were practically useless, and so because of it, nobody ever even attempted to try them out. And over the course of the original 3 years that this game was out, they did a bunch of patches and updates to try and retool everybody so there'd be a proper balance between abilities, talent points, and just how people could play. We're getting that. This is actually the finalized version of World of Warcraft that's just been reset, which means that in actuality, some stuff has become easier because you have better weapons to actually fight it off. Now, this does feel like they're actually editing the experience to some degree, because we're not actually experiencing the full, authentic launch, but instead a revised version of it. One that is honestly much, much more polished. And it's one of those things that I think was probably the smartest choice. They've also done things like, back in the day, some of the items that dropped would just suck. They've managed to edit a lot of the items to be their most perfectly patched versions. So it just definitely makes it where everything you do in this game actually matters. Definitely the best part about this game is the fact that since it is so brutal and since everything is so slow and tedious and actually requiring focus, it makes it where each little activity has a very, very genuine feeling to it. Something that actually matters. Like if you're just trying to go and visit your friends on a different continent, you actually need to run to a Zeppelin tower and catch a flying blimp, which can take 10 minutes. But that actually adds to the effect. It makes it where when you're doing something, it matters. If you're going somewhere, you need to plan your trip. It also, this is how I feel about the gear. Every single piece of thing I'm wearing right here, they all have stories of times I managed to beat another mage or another caster and get this cool piece of gear, or managing to actually track down this giant upgrade from a really weird, peculiar side quest that I discovered hidden inside a farm way off the beaten path. It makes it where this character is me. I am actually in the World of Warcraft, out there getting to explore stuff and beat bosses and actually hang out with my friends. Even the PvP. It's so cool being a low-level player and actually trying to hunt down other low-level players in an even fight, and actually blowing them up is an immense feeling of satisfaction. The World of Warcraft Classic is different. It is an experience that managed to shift itself from a classic game that's built purely on nostalgia into something that, in my opinion, is very, very modern. I actually think that they managed to pull this off. It's not perfect. I actually think that there are some really big issues like the extreme login queues. Right now, some servers you have to wait 5 or 6 hours to get into if it's a really high population server. I also think that the game crashes pretty often, but my biggest thing is that the game has shifted into a different territory, and I think it's going to build a very healthy fan base because of it. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving WoW Classic an 8 out of 10. I'm still just kind of impressed about the fact that I managed to put 100 hours into this in a single week, but it was actually a really enjoyable experience, and I'm probably going to be logging right back in to try and level my character the rest of the way to 60 and to try and start getting all that cool epic loot. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.